imagine if you're someone who likes one thing, and to get that done, and you've got people breathing down your neck asking you to perform with 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 or 15 or 20 other projects. What does that do to you? Well, it stresses you, it makes one less productive, one's well-being tends to go down, the work-life balance tends to be effective, our overall productivity, and particularly our sustainable productivity, that means not just production over a week or a month, but being able to manage that over a long period of time, necessarily goes down. So it's not good in the mid to long term. So that's a reason for trying to do something different, just as it is if you're a person who likes lots of things and hates doing one thing, perhaps because it could go wrong and there wouldn't be other things going well, or one likes short-term senses of achievement rather than one long-term 6 month, 1 year, 2 year sense of achievement. So people like that need also to get what they need to get those pluses. Now we can do that in quite small ways as well, so it may be that someone's on a big project, but we might be able to give them other smaller things around that so that they also get short-term results as well. Now all of this isn't just a theory. What we need to do is apply it. How do we do that? Well, we need to ask questions. So it's back to facilitating people, having conversations and attending to the issue of what's an ideal number of tasks. What's about right? Do you like big tasks, small tasks, medium tasks, a mix of those? What's ideal and what have you got at the moment? Now you may not be able to attend to that straight away, but the chances are, if you look at it strategically and looking ahead, it may be possible to adapt and change and modify so that they are doing the jobs which are most encouraging and productive and suit their style of need. Now people of course have other needs which are very specific to them, and one of those is the way in which they get information. So have you ever been frustrated by someone who you try and explain something, they go away and they do something else, and maybe they keep doing that? Now it might just be that they're a little dim, but it may also be that the way in which we're communicating with them isn't quite as good as it might be, and perhaps we can check that. Very often, if we're lucky, we've had enough exposure to an individual to know how they like to communicate to us. And there's our first set of clues. So if they tend to do it by telephone, the chances are they like to hear stuff, and we can maybe reciprocate in that way rather than sending emails or notes. So if we attend to them and how they communicate, we're already getting clues about how we can do it back to them in order to motivate, to stimulate and to encourage them. Some people, for example, like, if you've been in a training course and you see a slide with 40 bullet points on it in small type, a lot of us in the room will just start to go to sleep, but there'll be 1 or 2 people in a room of 20 who will suddenly sit forward and they will really start to get into those points. They want to understand everything, they want the detail. And that's the thing that really stimulates them. So we need to attend to that too. And again, if we're lucky, the individual we're trying to stimulate, trying to motivate, has already communicated to us in a way that tends to tell us what it is that is the preference for them. Is it very detailed? Is it very expansive and conceptual? What is it that they tend to communicate and we can communicate back? Now, if we're not getting that communication back, and we're not getting exposed to them communicating to us, perhaps they're sales representative or something, we don't actually have a lot of contact with them, then it may be that we just need to ask them questions. So we need to actually ask the specific questions about what it is that they need in terms of communication, or even ask them in all humbleness, not abdicating responsibility or being less of a manager, actually being more of a leader than a manager, and saying, look, I'd like to get this better, have I got it right? How can I make my communications to you more effective and more able? And you might get some honest information back saying it's all too long, I don't have time, I get bored after half a page, can you make it more concise, how about bullets rather than paragraphs? Useful feedback to motivate people. Another way in which people are different is their needs for strokes, for acknowledgement, for confidence. It may be that they are very independent and they look content and happy, and they're able to sustain that sense of work happiness on their own. But for a lot of people, whether it's a yearly handshake or a 6-monthly or a weekly stroke, their needs are different, and we ought to be attending to that on an individual basis as well. Again, we ought to have some clues for that just by looking very carefully and making changes. But if we don't know our people that well, now's the time to get to know them a bit better and find out. And as you get to know them better and find out, ask some specific questions that relate to exactly those things. So, how do you get enough praise? Be specific, why not? What is wrong in asking those questions? They're honest, they're frank, they tell us what we want to know and enable us to motivate them and keep them happier than they would be if we just try and do what we've always done. So very, very worthwhile. One further tip for this video I'd like to give you is one a lot of people now are aware of, specifically through neurolinguistic programming, and that is individuals' tendency to like information in a visual way, in an auditory way, that is, through speech and so forth, or in a way that's expressed more through feeling, through emotion, if you like, but particularly through feeling and sensing as well. So those needs are different, and we know that certainly in the Western world that most people, the majority of people, have a preference for visual information, for a lot of visual stuff. So it's quite useful to be thinking about that. Someone like Harry Hill, for example, the comedian, is very auditory. He makes very clever auditory jokes around the meanings of words, the semantics of language. Someone like him may well be more stimulated by speaking to him, but he may be by showing him a storyboard of a video shoot, for example. And some people like the language to be perhaps metaphoric, to give some sort of sense of kinesthetics. So, for example, we're talking about, oh, that feels good to me. Does that feel good to you? How do you see this? That's those sort of things. It's a sound as a bell. These sort of expressions. And if people are using those sort of expressions, then the chances are they're more stimulated if we respond back using those sorts of language constructs, those sorts of metaphors, to sort of encourage and stimulate their sensing of the world around them. There's a lot more in Me, Myself, My Team, which not this book, but and also in this book, Self-Coaching Leadership, from which a lot of the models and ideas are taken. This one by John Wiley. What we are doing, of course, is to provide you with free access to quite a lot of that without purchasing the book, and I hope that's useful to you. So in the next video we'll be looking at the carrots and sticks in motivating factors and demotivating factors, and thinking about both of those and how we can harness those two to get a double whammy in motivating people.